Hi, everyone, and welcome to our conference presentation called Teacher Ayúdame, Supporting Multilingual Estudiantes. I apologize that I couldn't be there in person today to present my part, but I do hope that you find the theoretical underpinnings or some research-based practices really helpful for your future classroom when you encounter a multilingual student. The first thing that I wanted All right, and so the main point of this presentation is to go over some of those research-supported practices. Now, all of these practices are going to be listed on the handout that we gave you with the exact studies and citations, so you can look them up and read about them further. But I do want to go over generally what you'll be seeing on that handout in terms of some practices for your classroom, the idea of translanguaging, and then some testing practices that we can include in our classroom for our multilingual students. Now, when it comes to practices for us in a classroom with multilingual students, the main thing you want to focus on is connections. Okay, you don't want to have your multilingual students feel as though they're left out because they don't speak the dominant language, English. Now, there are various different strategies that you can use, and they're all listed on the handout, whether you're a multilingual teacher or a monolingual teacher yourself. But you want to have students share words in their home language with other students, have the other students learn along with them. You can have them share stories and translate, okay? But you want to make sure that your students are feeling included, even though they don't speak English. Now, two very specific strategies that are on that handout is the double entry journal, which you can see on the left here. And so this is what students would do in their notebook. And on the left side, they copy something down from an academic text or anything that you're reading in the class. And on the right side, they're going to write down their perspectives, their connections, their ideas. And having multilingual students and mostly students from all over the world in different cultures, this is going to be a great jumping off point that you can start discussions in your classroom and share some of those ideas and perspectives from your multilingual students. Okay. And then on the right side here, you see an infographic here that says vocabulary is not a static bank from which we draw words, but a growing skill used to cultivate language. You don't want to just give students a word bank with some definitions. Nobody wants to learn that way. But if we teach students vocabulary in context, that is research-based, that it increases their vocabulary skill, teaches them context clues, teaches them inferencing. All right, so make sure you're including the vocabulary that you have in your unit into context. Write it on the board and include it in some sentences, things like that. Now, on that bottom of the handout, it talks about translanguaging. Now, what is translanguaging? That's including the home language in your class. You want to use the student's first language as a resource for them, and you want to have them maintain that language and also grow with that language. So I want to focus here on the how we translanguage in our classrooms. This is allowing students to read and view home language resources. Okay, if there's a video that you can show and it has maybe subtitles in their home language or a transcript that you can find in their home language, allow that student to use that resource. Don't force them to watch it in English or read the transcript in English. Display home languages alongside English. If you're teaching vocabulary words, okay, include students' home languages. Other students, English-speaking students, can learn from them. Another strategy that's not listed on here is if you're going to do essay writing, allow a student to use that planning period to write in their first language and include maybe some words that they know in English. And then as they revise and as they move into their final essay or even the drafting stage, they can start working on English, have some help of some additional tutors or from yourself as the teacher. Right? But they don't have to plan in English. They can use their first language as a scaffold, as a stepping stone, all right, for them to go into the full process of essay writing. So using their first language as a resource in the classroom, it's not English only. And then on the back page, it talks about testing. Now, that goes over a whole bunch of different ideas for testing, but one of the major focuses and one of the only ones that actually proved to be worthwhile when testing multilingual students is item modification. All right, and so what we have here on the screen are two math problems. They're the same math problem. The one on the left is the one that was originally written, the one that was geared towards English-speaking students. And the one on the right is linguistically modified. The content is completely the same, All right. The math skill is completely the same. The test items, all right, the answers are completely the same. The only thing that has changed is the linguistic complexity. All right. The wording is much more simple. Now, I would argue that all students would benefit from having a linguistically modified question like on the right. All right. So I'm not a math concentration, so you could tell me otherwise, but I would argue that even your English speaking students, all right, would benefit from a linguistically modified question. It's a bit more clear. So I want to give you one more example of a linguistically modified question. All right. And so you have the same math skill being produced. All right. The original item is on the right. The linguistically modified item is on the right here, excuse me. And it's the same math structure, and I included the notes here of how this is linguistically modified. The complex sentence structure was removed. So if Jill drives, right, this is a conditional sentence. All right, that's very complex. That's an intermediate level for English learners. All right, and it kind of offsets that key information. It puts that key information right there in front of the student. It's not buried within that complex structure of language. Okay. And you can read more about those testing accommodations and modifications on the handout. It also talks about performance-based assessments. If you're able to do them in your classroom, those would be very beneficial to your students because it gives them an alternative way to demonstrate that mastery of the content area. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.